Order. Welcome to meeting number 9 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Human Resources, Skills and Social Development and the Status of Persons with Disabilities. Pursuant to orders of reference of March 24th, April 11, and April 20, the committee is meeting for the purpose of receiving evidence concerning matters related to the government's response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Today's meeting is taking place by video conference, and the proceedings will be made available via the House of Commons website. The webcast will always show the person speaking rather than the entirety of the committee. In order to facilitate the work of our interpreters and to ensure an orderly meeting, I would like to outline a few rules to follow. First, interpretation in this video conference will work very much like in a regular committee meeting. You have the choice at the bottom of the screen of either Floor, English, or French. And for the witnesses that are listening, I would ask you to pay close attention to this. The MPs are used to this. In order to resolve sound issues, please ensure that you're on the English channel when speaking English and on the French channel when speaking French. If you plan to alternate from one language to the other, please also switch the interpretation channel so it aligns with the language you're speaking. Before speaking, please wait until I recognize you by name. When you are ready to speak, please click on the microphone icon to activate your mic. A reminder that all comments by members and witnesses should be addressed through the chair. Should a member need to request the floor outside of their designated time for questions, they should activate their mic and state that they have a point of order. However, if you wish to speak to a point of order that has been raised by another member, please use the raise hand function. When speaking, please speak slowly and clearly. When you are not speaking, your mic should be on mute. The use of headsets is strongly encouraged, and I see that our compliance level is getting better. If you have a microphone, this is primarily for witnesses again, if you have a microphone on your headset that hangs down, please make sure it's not rubbing on your shirt during your questioning time. Should any technical challenges arise, for example, in relation to interpretation, or if you're accidentally disconnected, please advise the chair or the clerk immediately, and the technical team will work to resolve them. Please note that we may need to suspend during these times as we need to ensure that all members are able to participate fully. So before we get started, if you haven't already done so, on the top right of your screen, if you click on Gallery View, you'll be able to see all video participants. It will ensure that everyone can see one another. And with those preliminaries, I would like now to thank the witnesses for joining us here today. We have with us the Minister of Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship, the Honourable Marco Mendicino, and he's accompanied by officials from Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada, Katrina Tapley, Deputy Minister, Marion Campbell-Jarvis, Assistant Deputy Minister, Strategic and Program Policy, and Louis Dumas, Acting Associate Deputy Minister, Operations. Finally, from Employment and Social Development Canada, we have Philip Massé, Director General, Canada Student Worker Program, Skills and Employment Branch, as well as Tara Cosgrove, Executive Director, Integrity Service Branch. Minister Mendicino, the floor is yours. You have 10 minutes.
I want to begin by thanking you and the members of this committee for the opportunity to join you this morning. This is not only my first appearance before HUMA, but my first address in this new virtual era of Parliament. I hope that all members, your families, and your staff are keeping well and healthy. It has been a period of great transition for all of us, and I commend this committee for continuing its important work. We convene at an unprecedented moment in our history. COVID-19 poses one of the gravest risks that Canada and the rest of the world have seen in many generations. Yet we have come together to meet the challenge. No one deserves our gratitude more than the frontline healthcare workers and first responders who bravely put their own lives on the line to save others. To them we say, thank you, merci. You have our most profound appreciation. The best way we can demonstrate our gratitude to these healthcare heroes is by remaining united in our most urgent cause, to confront and overcome this global pandemic. Since the outbreak, There has been renewed collaboration throughout all levels of government and across party lines. Together, we have passed historic legislation, which is delivering billions in emergency financial relief aid for workers, businesses, and charities. We have operationalized unparalleled public healthcare controls and launched a procurement and production effort, the likes of which have not been seen since the Second World War. And our cooperation is paying off. We are starting to see the curve flatten. There is reason for cautious optimism. However, the storm has not yet completely passed. There are still risks ahead, and our work must continue. My department is contributing in the overall Government of Canada response to COVID-19. Dès le début,
from the outset, we acted swiftly to put in place travel restrictions in order to limit the spread of the virus. These are necessary and crucial measures to ensure the health and safety and security of Canadians.
In March, Canada and the United States entered into an interim agreement prohibiting all non-essential travel between our countries. We agreed to temporarily return asylum seekers with assurances from the United States that their rights and due process would be respected. We also agreed to exemptions to this agreement to include immediate family members of Canadian residents whose travel is essential, those who hold valid work visas, including temporary foreign workers, those who hold valid student visas, and permanent resident visa holders who were approved prior to March 18, 2020. These exemptions support the Canadian economy and essential services, as well as supporting reuniting families. Je pense.
It is my belief that it is, it's also important to say that my work is closely related to that of many of my minister colleagues. Our teams cooperate on a daily basis to ensure that Canadians and their families have everything that they need in this very difficult time. We're working very closely, but we have very specific responsibilities and mandates, and the government is providing preferential treatment to essential services sectors such as the food services sector, healthcare, etc.
Temporary foreign workers are vital to the success of our agricultural and seafood sectors, and by extension, the food security of all Canadians. Let me pause here to express my deep concern following the outbreaks at several food processing plants and farms around the country. Our thoughts go out to the families of those workers who recently passed away. Everyone has the right to work in a safe environment in Canada, including temporary workers. And that is why our government introduced mandatory 14-day isolation protocols for facilities like these. It's also the reason we added new regulations under the Immigration and Refugee Protection Act to create enforcement powers to ensure compliance with physical and social distancing rules in the workplace. We backed these measures with $50 million to help food production and employers. In addition, we've sped up the application process to take less than a week, thanks to a new dedicated processing team and added flexibility in online processing. And I want to also extend my appreciation to our public servants who have truly and remarkably innovated in this challenging period. And the proof is in the numbers. Roughly 23,000 seasonal agricultural workers are already here to help plant and seed.
Last month alone, over 11,000 temporary foreign workers came to Canada on chartered flights to support our Canadian farmers. for the planting and seeding season and to work more generally in our agriculture and agri-foods sectors.
There are another 10,000 whose visas have been approved. These workers will provide critical support to our farmers and processors in particular, and will ensure Canadians have the food they need. For workers who were already in Canada and have been impacted by COVID-19, we've introduced additional strategies to address workers' rights, status restoration, and timelines for documentation. Most workers are able to extend their permit to remain legally in Canada while awaiting a decision on their application, and many workers can continue to work in this situation. La santé des travailleurs.
The health of our Canadian workers is our top priority, and that is why we're continuing to work very closely with the provinces and employees associations to ensure that they have all the tools they need to safeguard the health and safety of all Canadians.
Mr. Chair, the International Student Program is one of the most successful programs in government. It contributes over $21 billion per year to the Canadian economy. It remains an economic driver in cities, big and small, and the students who participate in this program contribute in many positive ways to the social fabric of Canada. We have engaged with our provincial counterparts and the post-secondary sector and acted on their feedback by temporarily lifting the 20-hour-per-week restriction on study permit holders working in essential services like healthcare. We've also provided more flexibility for students whose classes we've moved online due to the emergency to keep them from being penalized on their post-graduation work permit eligibility, provided that they complete at least 50% of their study program in class in Canada. These changes have been received very positively, and we are actively considering other options to ensure the long-term success of this program. Mr. Chair, I hope this brief outline of the work that my department has been engaged in as part of the response to COVID-19 has been informative. We will continue to ensure that the immigration policies that we have been put in place are both effective in responding to the pandemic and will position Canada for success as we begin to reopen the economy. In the interim, we will continue to support the day-to-day administration of the travel exemptions regime by ensuring that foreign workers and international students are able to enter into Canada because we recognize their vital importance to our economy and to our food security. The measures I have spoken about today, the facilitation, the financial supports, and the regulations will help ensure that the enormous benefits that temporary foreign workers bring to our economy are not lost in the disruption of the pandemic, even as we adjust our programs to ensure the health and security of all Canadians. I know I've only touched on some of our work in this busy time, so thank you, Mr. Chair and committee members, and I am now looking forward to hearing your questions. Merci.
Thank you very much, Minister, and I believe we may have some questions, starting with Mr. Kent for the Conservatives for 6 minutes. Welcome to the committee, sir. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks to you, Minister, right off the top, to your exempt staff, to department officials for timely responses to a variety of my requests, comments, and complaints regarding issues since the crisis began. Not all of our issues have been resolved, but the accessibility is appreciated. Now, Minister, your department faces massive process and protocol reconsiderations as a result of the COVID crisis. In the short term, with regards to the seasonal agricultural temporary foreign worker program, Canada needs to find a balance between millions of unemployed Canadians, our workers, and the skilled, experienced TFWs that are essential in some areas of the sector to ensure food production and food security right across the sector. Last year, almost 100,000 temporary foreign workers came to Canada. You've given us the update in the last month of 11,000, with 10,000 approved. We know a good many didn't make it into the country for a variety of reasons, but I'm wondering, what is the department's estimate for total temporary foreign workers in Canada being able to get to Canada for the rest of the planting, growing, and harvest season?
You're on mute, Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Kent, for the question. And I do want to say that it has been very collaborative to work with you and your staff, and we will continue to engage to work through the issues and the cases that you brought to my department's attention. And I do want to underline that we are indeed concerned about Canadians and unemployment, and we are providing financial support to Canadians right across the country through a variety of programs so that they can bridge over this very difficult period. And when it comes to the temporary foreign work program, as you point out, the reason for this program in the first instance is that there are some sectors of our economy that have proven stubborn over the years to recruit the domestic labor and skill that we need. And so in an effort to fill those gaps, we have the temporary foreign worker program. And in particular, that program has been a real success in the seasonal agricultural sector. And that is why we have ensured that as part of our overall immigration policy, we've created an exemption for seasonal agricultural work. I want to, again, take a moment to highlight the way in which we are facilitating their entry with an exemptions regime by innovating, standing up new teams. The processing times have truly come down remarkably so that we can prioritize their entry into Canada. Some of the numbers which you had asked about, I already mentioned in my opening remarks, but we have approximately 20,000 who are already here, 10,000 who are approved and who we are attempting to get here. And we are working very closely with our provincial partners and the employers to ensure that they get here as quickly as possible.
Okay, thank you. Now, Minister, even before the COVID pandemic, GTA communities and beyond were struggling with the downloaded costs of accommodating thousands of men, women, and children who availed themselves of the Prime Minister's illegal border crossing invitation and made irregular asylum claims. Many of them are now clients of expanded homeless shelters and food banks. In the city of Toronto, just for example, more than 3,000 shelter beds have been added to the system since 2015. And again, before COVID, the city had pleaded with the federal government to provide more than $100 million to cover the costs to date and going forward. Now, I know you don't write the checks, but might you remind the Prime Minister of his unfulfilled obligations to cover the costs that his misguided policy, fair to say, has downloaded on the GTA?
Well, first of all, when it comes to our asylum, Mr. Kent, I hope you will agree that Canada is truly a role model in the world, and that is because we believe in taking a compassionate approach to those who've been displaced through no fault of their own. And indeed, that work will continue as it is truly one of the enduring values which underpins our immigration system. And with regards to the interim agreement that we have entered into with the United States, as I pointed out, it upholds those rights while ensuring that we are protecting the health and safety of Canadians throughout this pandemic. And with regards to your question about our financial commitments to ensure that refugees are able to access the essential services once they are making their claims. Our relationship with the provinces and in particular with municipalities like Toronto have been very strong over the years through successive governments. And in particular, when it comes to Mayor Tory, with whom I have a very good working relationship, as does the rest of the members of our government, we have ensured that year over year, they are getting the financial resources that they need to bridge over the time in which individuals are coming and making asylum claims. That is a system that has worked very well over the years, and as I say, it will continue.
So that $100 million check will be cut?
Well, as you say, Mr. Kent, I don't cut the checks, but certainly we have in the past made sure that through a variety of programs, including the interim housing assistant program, that checks in the past have been cut. And of course, we will continue to partner with the City of Toronto and other cities who are doing their fair share to help land asylum claimants and refugees.
Thank you, Minister, and thank you, Mr. Kent. Colleagues, I regret to inform you that we do have a technical problem that's going to require us to suspend for 2 minutes. It relates to the phone lines. So we are suspended and we'll be back to you in 2 minutes. Thank you. Mr. Viss, I'm not sure if you can hear me, but I just got a note advising that the techs are asking if you could remove your background because of the broadcasting issue. Yeah, so if that's a request coming from the techs, if you could please do that. Thank you. I appreciate that, Brad. Thanks.
And we are good to go. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk. I believe we have our technical issues resolved. We'll now go to Mr. Dong for 6 minutes. Mr. Dong, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Minister. Very nice to see you here at the committee online. I have a particular interest in international students. Our public universities and like Seneca in my writing rely heavily on international student revenue while waiting for the province's direction on the upcoming semester, September, to plan and act on recruitment. I want to hear from you. What's your message to the potential international student candidates around the world? And specifically, when are you going to reopen the application intake?
Well, thank you, Mr. Dong, both for your question and for your ongoing advocacy regarding international students. And I just want to take a moment to reiterate what a tremendous economic contributor this program is to our economy. It pumps approximately $21 billion into the economy each year, but it also adds to our social fabric. The skills, the experience that these international students bring to our post-secondary institutions is very significant. I want to say that we have been engaged directly and extensively with our provincial partners, as well as the post-secondary institutional leaders themselves. And as a result of their feedback, as I mentioned in my opening remarks, we have made a number of modifications to the international students program to ensure its ongoing success. So as I mentioned, we have created some additional flexibility around online classes to ensure that those who are here are able to take their online courses this spring semester in a way that will not penalize their ability to work after they graduate. We've also made some similar modifications for those international students who are abroad who had plans to come to attend school this spring, but were not able to because of the travel restrictions which are in place. And we have ensured that they are able to continue to participate in those programs. And as I mentioned as well, we have widened the parameters of work permits which attach to student visas to ensure that those who are taking a degree in the essential services sector, so for example, nursing or taking a degree in medicine, or if you're taking a diploma in healthcare work, think about the additional support that those students can lend to our front lines, whether it's in a long-term retirement home or in hospitals where we know COVID-19 strikes very hard and very quickly. So when you take all of these measures and you put them together, you'll see that our government has truly committed to ensuring that the international student program is a success, while at the same time protecting the health and safety of all Canadians throughout this pandemic. And of course, when it comes to our intake process, we look forward to having some additional news for you in the not too distant future.
Thank you, Minister. And I know how committed you are in supporting international students. You came on one of my Zoom meetings and talking to international students face to face. Thank you very much for that as well. The international student, when they graduate, they're entitled to apply for 1 or 3 year work permit, as you know. It is a crucial tool for them to accumulate enough points to apply for their permanent residence status. Obviously, they're facing tremendous challenge during COVID. Would you consider a 1 year automatic extension to their work permit?
Well, on the issue of extending visas and permits, in general terms, my department has exercised its discretion judiciously in the circumstances to ensure that there is the least amount of disruption, particularly for those visa holders, and in particular students and workers, as I mentioned, who are here in Canada, recognizing that it's a challenge to get back home, given that there aren't many international flights currently right now. And of course, those flexibilities are appropriate and they're exercised responsibly. With regards to your question about the consideration of what occurs in the future around the 1 to 3 year requirement and having that requisite Canadian experience, I'm open to considering those options. Of course, we always have to balance the integrity of this program because we do want to be sure that we are attracting the best and the brightest, those students who are here to acquire a degree, to put their shoulder to the wheel and to contribute to the economy, especially in essential services, and then to take those experiences back home should they choose to and when they choose to. And with regards to transitioning from the international student program to permanent residence, those pathways do exist. And as you point out, we do have a point system that does look to align the skills and experiences that our Canadian economy needs with the ones that are presented by the students. So all of those principles will continue to apply as we seek to leverage the benefits of this program going forward.
Well, thank you, Minister, for keeping that into consideration going forward. Because I know from talking to international students, that is perhaps the number one issue that would like some help with. My third question is that around the world, that we see that COVID-19 brings out the best in people as well, unfortunately, sometimes the worst. I have seen increase boldness in discriminatory actions against Asian Canadians. In my community, I hear and I see that happening. Newcomers and 2 international students as well. So in that context, and in the context of perhaps the new interpretation of globalization post-COVID, what's your message to new Canadians and the best and brightest we try to attract to immigrate to Canada? What's your message?
Short answer, please, Minister.
My message is we are with you, and we will condemn any and all examples of hate, racism in its many forms, and that is work that I know that our government has stood for, and I hope that all members of our House will join us in condemning. There's no place for racism or hatred in any form, even during a pandemic. And of course, we will be with those students and those new Canadians.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Mr. Dong. Suite, nous avons Madame.
Now, Madame Chabot, for 6 minutes, please. Thank you very much. I'll be sharing my time with my colleague Christine Normandin. Minister, welcome. Thank you for being here. We know that in your sector, there are a whole host of issues, but I'd like to particularly discuss issues affecting Quebec. You referred to one particular economic sector, that is the agricultural sector, and Quebec relies heavily on its temporary foreign workers who support this major sector of the economy. And we know that farmers are concerned. Some of the temporary foreign workers for the seasonal agricultural sector have arrived. First, I want to know if we can fast-track the processing of these applications so that we can, in fact, meet all the labour needs. And as a supplemental, how are we going to ensure the safety and security of these temporary foreign workers from whatever foreign shores they come from? What will the government do in terms of the steps that it will take to safeguard their arrival?
Merci pour
Thank you very much for your question, Madame Chabot. And first and foremost, I'd like to thank you for the excellent work that you do in the sector. It's absolutely crucial. I've discussed at length with my counterparts in Quebec these issues, and as a result, we are making a lot of headway in our efforts to bring temporary foreign workers to Canada and Quebec to work in the agricultural sector. Now, in my department, we are making a particular focus of the application processes for this particular labour classification. Of course, there have been a lot of resources that have been put in place to fast-track these temporary foreign workers' application processes.
Continue to place the resources that are necessary to expedite and prioritize the arrival of temporary foreign workers in Canada. As I mentioned, 20,000 who are already here. There are another 10,000 which we hope will be arriving in short order. And to address the last part of your question, Madame Chabot, what we are doing to ensure the health and safety of the temporary foreign workers is putting in place a set of regulations around mandatory isolation, that 14-day period where we have to be sure that they're asymptomatic. And we are providing $50 million to the agricultural sector to ensure that the accommodations that need to be made in both lodging as well as workplace safety are made to protect not only the temporary workers that are coming in, but the overall security of our food supply chain.
Ce sera mon tour, Monsieur le ministre. C'est un plaisir de vous revoir. J'aurais aussi des questions.
Hello, Minister. A pleasure again to see you. I have questions about the agricultural seasonal temporary foreign workers. Now, the fact of the matter is that unfortunately, during the COVID crisis, those workers who were at the end of their work visas and whose employers had no work for them, those workers couldn't return to Guatemala and they couldn't work anywhere else. For example, maple syrup producers in Quebec, as the sugar shacks were closed, there was not enough labour, whereas apple growers would have liked a little bit of a helping hand for their harvesting. Now, if there is a hailstorm that destroys a harvest and another harvest can be saved, unfortunately, these temporary foreign workers aren't allowed under the law to be transferred to another employer. So in a closed work permit, can these temporary foreign workers have up to 15 or 30 days where they're entitled to work for another company? That would enable them, first, to be able to continue to work, secondly, to make an application for an extension, and thirdly, for emergencies where there's a need for an additional labour, maybe these workers could pitch in for 1 day, just 1 day. Response. Thank you very much, Madame Normandin, for your question and also for your hard work. And I know that you're working with my team on a constant basis on these crucial issues. Now, on the specific topics that you mentioned, i.e. creating more flexibility for the work permits that are available for temporary foreign workers, well, we're going to continue to look at that issue. We know that it's urgent and pressing, so we need to find innovative new ways of guaranteeing our food security. So we're going to continue to look for solutions in a collaborative process.
As I mentioned, Madame Normandin, we are continuing to prioritize both the approvals of new temporary foreign work permits, as well as inviting extensions of those temporary foreign work visas which are about to expire. And we are granting implied status to temporary foreign workers who are here, whose visas are expiring, and finding ways to ensure that if they have to move from one job to another within the same sector, that we are trying to expedite that process as quickly as possible. And I look forward to continuing to work with you on that important initiative. Merci.
Merci, Madame Normandin. Merci, le ministre.
Thank you very much, Madame Normandin and Minister.
6 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the Minister. I also appreciate the calls that we've had and the responsiveness of your office. I would like to just follow up on the question, and I hope that you have an answer for me today. With respect to temporary foreign workers, caregivers, for example, where they have to meet the 2-year work requirement, and because of COVID, their work has been interrupted. Will that period of time where their work's been interrupted count towards their 2-year work requirement?
Thank you, Ms. Kwan, and thank you as well for the opportunity to work with you on these issues. And the short answer is that we are continuing to explore that as an option. We don't have a definitive answer for you today, but we are exploring it as an option. And as we discussed in the meantime, there are a variety of programs that caregivers can access to bridge them through this period in COVID-19.
Well, thank you. I hope that we can get an answer soon, because the issue around their 24-month work requirement is essential towards their path to permanency. If we don't count that period, that means these workers will be further penalized and they will be, delayed in their process of reuniting with their loved ones. Already, as it were, my view is that these workers should be allowed to come with permanent residence status on arrival. That is not the case, and this further penalizes them. I hope that you will take that into consideration. With respect to citizenship certificates, it's been brought to my attention that there is a delay, actually long delays, for people trying to access their citizenship certificate so that they can actually move forward with the process of coming to Canada and so on. When will that be resumed in its normal processing?
Thank you for the question, Ms. Kwan. And as you know, my department has actually made significant progress over the years at reducing backlogs when it comes to citizenship applications. But of course, COVID-19 has had a very direct and significant impact on our operational capabilities. But notwithstanding that, as I mentioned in my remarks, my department is standing up alternative processes, including the exploring of new, innovative, and online solutions for all of our lines of business and service, including in the area of citizenship ceremonies. You may have seen in recent days that we've had a couple of virtual ceremonies, or at least one, if I'm not mistaken. And those are the types of solutions that we will continue to explore going forward. But I agree it's important, and happy to work with you on that.
Thank you, Minister. Perhaps I will connect with you and your staff offline. I do have a particular case that is stuck in the system at the moment. I'm also wondering, it's been brought to my attention that there are some caregivers, for example, where their employer are telling them that the CERB to which they collect is their income. And so therefore, they're required to go to work. And so in that instance, that clearly is not the case. What should the caregivers do?
Well, first, as I mentioned in my opening remarks, no worker should have to go to work in dangerous conditions, and that readily applies to caregivers. And that's one of the reasons why we have put in place protections around mandatory isolation to protect the workers, to protect the families, to protect everyone.
Sorry, Minister. Sorry to interrupt, but I'm raising a very specific example where people are applying for CERB and are receiving CERB, and their employer are telling them that that is their income, and then still requiring them to go to work. In those circumstances, should people be filing a complaint in the vulnerable workers category and get an open work permit? Because they're very scared about that, right? And if they complain about it to their employer, would they lose their job? And what will happen to them? So people are very worried about that.
Yes, I was coming to that, Ms. Kwan, and I agree that it sounds very problematic, and I would be happy to work with you if there's a specific case that you are concerned about regarding that. But just point out that when it comes to occupational health and safety, that is a matter that falls squarely within provincial jurisdiction, but there are other protections in place that we can explore together.
Okay, sorry. Yes, specific cases, but on the whole, when that happens, should people go and make a complaint to the vulnerable workers stream?
I think that if workers are being told that the Canada Emergency Response Benefit is their income and therefore they still have to work, that is a problem, and yes, we need to address it.
Thank you. On the question around people, some employers want to rehire their worker because they're hoping after COVID-19 they would be able to do so, but they might actually be required to apply for another LMIA. Would you consider waiving the cost of the LMIA for those employers so that they are not hit twice because of this situation?
Short response, Minister, please.
As you know, in some cases, in particular the caregiver class, we have looked at waiving LMIA fees, but it's a program that is administered by my colleague, Minister Qualtrough, and I am happy to take that feedback to her to have that conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kwan. Thank you, Minister. Now to Mr. Kent for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Chair, and I'll be splitting my time with Ms. Doncho. Minister, given Canada's massive unemployment for the foreseeable future, and notwithstanding your comments to the Canadian Bar Association Immigration Law Section last week, that immigration will continue to be an economic driver, what is the government's scale-back planning for economic migrants and refugees for the next 2 years from the current immigration target of 350,000 by 2021?
Well, Mr. Kent, the comments that I made to the Canadian Bar Association are ones that I stand by today, in that when you look back in history, in spite of the many challenges that our country has faced, there is a very forward-looking trend that looks to leverage both the value as well as the economic prosperity that is driven by looking around the world for the best and the brightest. And I believe that is an enduring value which will continue. How we do that and taking a look at our levels and what is our operational capacity is, of course, going to be driven by the context. And of course, as you well know, and as we all know, we are in the midst of a pandemic. But immigration is a hallmark, and it will continue to be. It's something that I think that Canadians relate to. The journey in coming to this country, and as I say, contributing both to the social fabric as well as to our economy, is one that will last beyond COVID-19.
Well, and as you know, Conservatives have always been strong supporters of a strong immigration policy. We do need immigrants to in normal times to grow our society, grow our economy. But given that the economic crisis, if you will linger long after the health crisis has passed, can Canada accommodate an additional 1% of immigrants and refugees added to our population in the foreseeable future?
Well, as I pointed out, the work that my department has done, notwithstanding the impacts of COVID-19, has been truly remarkable in a variety of lines of service, including continuing landings in ways in which are truly innovative. And I commend our public servants for adapting to the situation. And with regards to your specific question around levels and how it is that we will continue to immigrate in Canada, I have a mandate letter. That letter is very transparent, and we will continue to examine the circumstances, including the surrounding context of Canada's response to COVID-19 as we plan for the future. That is something that I think that Canadians will absolutely support, and we should all support as parliamentarians, because immigration is an important policy, but it's also part of who we are. It is a part of our fabric. It's part of our identity. And I believe that it will continue to be long after we have overcome COVID-19.
Agreed, Minister. Time is short. Just a quick question. When will you provide to Canadians an updated target intake figure?
Well, Mr. Kent, being the veteran that you are, you will know that I am scheduled to provide an update in the fall. And in the interim, I look forward to many more conversations with you as my critic in this area and all parliamentarians.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I cede my time to Ms. Dancho.
Thank you, Chair.
Dancho, please.
Thank you, Chair. Minister, yesterday I had the opportunity to question your cabinet colleagues about small businesses in my riding that have been left behind by your government. Although they offered no answers, they insisted your government is listening to small businesses and will do everything it can to help them. However, back in February, I provided you with a letter regarding an alarming small business issue in my riding. Since then, my office has sent 4 more letters and emails to you about this issue. As you may recall, the issue involves a moving and storage company in Winnipeg that in February 2019 began moving and storing furniture for government-assisted Syrian refugees settling in Winnipeg. They were hired to do so on behalf of a Quebec-based company contracted by your department. Over a year later, payment has not been made for this contract, with nearly $25,000 owed to my constituent, which is a considerable amount. Given the devastation happening to small business across this country, can I have your guarantee, Minister, that you and your government will move quickly to find a resolution to this issue?
In 30 seconds.
In 30 seconds. Ms. Dancho, you have my guarantee that I will work with you and get back.
So when will that be? Next week? Because that'll be 12 weeks that we've been waiting for a response. So next week?
We will be back to you next week, yes.
So before Friday, May 17th at 3:30 Central Time, you will provide me with an answer for resolution for my constituent.
We will be back to you before then, yes.
Correct. Thank you. Great. That's all, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Dancho. Thank you, Mr. Minister. Over to Ryan Turnbull for 5 minutes. Mr. Turnbull.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and really feel a lot of gratitude for having Minister of Immigration here. Thanks, Honourable Minister Mendicino, for being here. I also want to echo the sentiments of my colleagues that I've found your office and yourself to be accessible and responsive at this time, which is really great to see and is much needed and much appreciated. I also want to say thanks to your team, which I know every minister is backed by a very strong team, and yours is no exception. I have 3 areas of questioning. My colleagues have echoed some of my comments, so I may focus in other places. But my first question is about the settlement service agencies. Canada has a network of settlement service agencies that I think is very robust And this network plays an essential role in the successful integration process for both immigrants and refugees. So I want to ask, what is being done to ensure that enough flexibility is given to those organizations at this time to support immigrants, refugees, international students, temporary foreign workers, non-status persons, and any others that may be experiencing heightened vulnerability during the pandemic that we're in?
Well, thank you, Mr. Turnbull, both for your work in this area and for the very constructive conversation that we had recently with regards to the work that settlement service organizations are doing across the country, and as well for your advocacy regarding vulnerable populations. And let me just say a few words about the latter, because I believe it's the gist of your question. Our government has invested over $157.5 million to support municipalities in addressing people who are living in vulnerable situations. This is also in addition to $50 million, which we have provided to help women's shelters and victims of gender-based violence to strengthen their ability, their capacity to manage throughout the course of the outbreak. And in addition to that, we have provided $100 million to Food Banks Canada, which will again provide food security and the life necessities which are required for our vulnerable populations. These are just a couple of the very concrete investments and initiatives which we have put into place to ensure that no one is left behind throughout the course of COVID-19. And our settlement service organizations with whom I directly engage in routinely. I've been holding frequent calls with our umbrella organizations across the country, including the likes of Okazi and Costi and other associations for whom I think we really owe a debt of gratitude. They too are adapting to the circumstances, but they are providing the essential support that is needed to our vulnerable populations throughout COVID-19, and that's work that I look forward to continuing with them.
Thanks very much, Minister. That's great, and it's great to hear that there's a really close working relationship with those organizations, because I think they play an essential role. I wondered also, I want to go back to the temporary foreign workers program. We all know just how important this is to our food system, and the food system is in particularly vulnerable right now during this pandemic. I just wondered, I'm concerned about labor mobility and many temporary foreign workers potentially not being able to work in the jobs that were initially intended. And so I want to understand a little bit better about, if you could explain in more detail about how the program's been adapted to accommodate and support them in being able to find work elsewhere, and hopefully, relatively quickly for everybody's sake.
Well, thank you, Mr. Turnbull. And I mentioned earlier to my colleagues from the Bloc Québécois, we are looking and continuing to study options to create that flexibility within the closed work permit class, particularly for those temporary foreign workers whose visas have expired, or for those who've lost their work. And we are prioritizing the extensions of those visas and working very closely with those workers, as well as the employers in the essential services sectors, like the health sector, as well as the food sector, the agricultural and seafood sectors, to try and provide the continuity that they require. I will also say that we have ensured that workers in this sector have implied status while they move on to that next position, and we'll continue to find ways to prioritize them, because we know that this is vital for our food security for all Canadians.
Great. So, and if they have a new job offer and a labor market impact assessment, then essentially I think they're able to work right away. Is that right?
Well, it depends on exactly the kind of permit, and some permits are more restrictive than others. So in some cases, there's an ability to move from one job to the other within the same organization or the same employer. But in some other cases, it's very much restricted to the position itself. And those are precisely the types of solutions that we are looking to create some additional flexibility in. But in the meantime, I believe that the resources and the expedited processes that have been put into place, not only by my department, but as well by my colleague, Minister Qualtrough, as well as Madame Bibeau, will together ensure that we have the ability to move workers around to fill those gaps in seasonal agricultural work, because this is a critical time of year. The planting and seeding season has to continue. And in fact, we've made a lot of good progress, as I mentioned to Mr. Turnbull. We saw really good numbers in April, and we're starting to see those numbers pick up in May as well, too.
Yeah, I think
Thank
we
you,
all
Minister.
appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Turnbull. Now, Mr. Kent, for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Chair. Minister, many rejections of approved TFWs at border entry points seem to be a result of inconsistent recognition or refusal by CBSA officers of the worker's approved status. How's this being resolved?
It's being resolved when those cases and those issues are being brought to my attention. And of course, you and I have worked very closely on that. And I thank you for your collaboration, and we will continue to do that work together. And I'll just say there has been a real renewed, I think, spirit of collaboration among all members in the House. And that is vital to resolving these issues. I think what we have tried to do in the interim is provide the operational clarity and guidelines to our partners at CBSA. And by and large, the system, both the travel restrictions which are in place to limit the spread of COVID-19, but as well to ensure that the exemptions regime, which includes temporary foreign workers, is a system that is working very effectively. And that is evidenced by the good numbers that we saw in the arrivals in April last month for temporary foreign workers in the seasonal agricultural sector. And we are starting to see the same progress, and those numbers pick up in May as well.
Now, the province of New Brunswick is the only province to have imposed a blockade, if you will, against approved temporary foreign workers. How has the department, how has the government worked to resolve that difference?
Well, I'm not entirely sure that's how New Brunswick characterized it, Mr. Kent, but I will tell you that I have been engaged with my provincial counterpart in that province, and I know that all levels of our government have been engaged with our counterparts in New Brunswick. And of course, as all provinces, they are taking decisions which they feel are in the best interests, in the public healthcare interests of their people, and it's a jurisdiction that we share with New Brunswick. But I'm also assured by New Brunswick that they are committed to the temporary foreign worker program in the long run. And that is a collaboration that will continue. And in the meantime, what we have done for the New Brunswick temporary foreign workers who were impacted, we have found new work for them in the region, so as to ensure that we're taking an all hands on deck approach to guaranteeing our food supply chain.
Thank you. Now, can you provide an update on department operations with regards to economic immigration, to express entry, and the provincial sponsorship programs, as well as the pilot projects? Are any of these programs suspended pending the end of the COVID crisis?
Well, as I mentioned, Mr. Kent, our operational capabilities have been impacted by COVID-19, as all lines of business and government have, as quite honestly, all society has and all businesses have. And notwithstanding those challenges, we have stood up new alternative processes. We have equipped our personnel with the online tools and the resources that they need to continue landings. And those landings will continue in a variety of classes, including in the economic class and the humanitarian class. As you know, we will be providing some additional numbers and an update in the fall, and I look forward to delivering more news at that time.
Would it be prudent in the short term to assign more decision-making responsibility to provinces and municipalities with regards to immigration and refugee intake, given the very different needs and capacity absorbing capabilities of different regions of the country?
Well, Mr. Kent, we always stand ready to receive offers of support from our provincial partners when it comes to landing refugees in the humanitarian sector. And I will always accept a call from my provincial colleagues on that front. And in the meantime, we are collaborating very closely when it comes to the administration of the provincial nominee program, which is a program that has for many, many years been a tool that has been used by the provinces in concert with the overall levels plan that we intend to to continue to ensure that is implemented. And I'm looking forward to an upcoming FPT meeting with my provincial colleagues this summer.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Kent. Thank you, Minister. Mr. Vaughan, for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you very much. Just on the issue that was raised by my colleague from the Conservatives, a couple of questions about the refugee flow into the country during this time. You referenced that it hadn't stopped. How many regular refugees have arrived and to what categories?
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Vaughan. And just to clarify, under the current non-essential travel ban that exists with the United States, we have entered into a concurrent arrangement whereby we are returning to the United States those who arrive at both official points of entry. I would just simply point out that when they arrive at the official point of entry, that the Safe Third Country Agreement continues to apply as a means of ensuring due process and rights that would apply in those circumstances. And in between official points of entry, we have successfully sought and obtained assurances from the United States that there will be those protections in place, but at the same time, allowing those who are turned back to return to Canada should they choose to pursue their asylum claim. As far as the additional numbers, if you just give me one moment, I will provide you with an update on that. But I will just say that the numbers have been quite manageable in the interim, and that is, I think, a reflection of the fact that the agreement is working, that our system is working. And if you'll just indulge me, if you'd like to move on to your next question, I will continue to get those numbers and provide them in my subsequent answer.
Sure. And just to confirm, the support for the Toronto shelter system, combined with our annual allotment and the top up from our department of $157 million, the $42 million extra that's been sent to the City of Toronto, that's almost twice what they received last year. Is that part of the negotiations that you're involved with in terms of looking for additional top ups may be required to accommodate some of the pressures that large cities face?
Well, first, thank you for highlighting the additional financial commitments and supports that have been delivered to the City of Toronto and indeed to municipalities right across the country. And yes, of course, we will continue to, I have certainly will continue to make the case for those supports as required, because municipalities are an important partner when it comes to the work that we do in landing refugees.
And in terms of the numbers that have come in since the, I guess in the last month, what are the numbers that have arrived?
So in terms of the actual physical individuals who have come, what I have here is that we have had 12 at our airports, 4 who have arrived in our marine ports, and 37 by land. And that is just within the COVID-19 period.
And in terms of irregular claims, the Conservative member referenced a concern here. How many irregular claims across land bridges have we had since in the last month?
Mr. Vaughan, I will have to come back to you with that precise number, but at my last report, it was in the low teens.
Mr. Vaughan, can you just hold your mic as you speak? Thanks. Go ahead.
Yeah, my understanding it's 11. Is that would that be consistent with the number you've seen? 11 people have come across the land bridges.
It would be. I just don't want to commit to that number because it was a few days ago. But I think that it would. I'm confident in saying that it's in that range.
Okay, and in terms of the impact on the shelter system, that would significantly reduce that pressure for cities like Toronto.
Well, I think that logic follows. And of course, that doesn't mean that we don't have an obligation to our vulnerable populations. And as I pointed out in answer to Mr. Turnbull, and as you well know, Mr. Vaughan, because you are a vociferous advocate in this area, we are continuing to provide that support to municipalities to take care of every person who is in those vulnerable populations.
And just one last question on temporary foreign workers. We know under the Conservatives, a number of fast food restaurants availed themselves of this program. I'm just making sure that we're not staffing up service jobs with temporary foreign workers that could be filled by Canadians, that the temporary foreign worker program is focused in on highly skilled labor required for the agricultural sector. Is that the priority?
It is. And just before I come to the rest of my answer, I've gotten an update since you just asked it. It appears that there are 24 individuals who have sought claims, and that is the most recent number that we have. And yes, of course, the temporary foreign worker program is one that is designed, as I say, to ensure that we are filling those gaps that have been difficult to recruit domestic labor for. And there are programs that put the appropriate focus in the seasonal agricultural sector as well as the seafood sector precisely to achieve that end.
Thank you, Minister, and thank you, Mr. Bond. Nous avons Madame Chabot pour 2 minutes et
We now have Madame Chabot for 2.5 minutes.
Madame Chabot.
Can you hear us, Madame Chabot?
Le son est bon.
Is the sound good? Is it audible? Yes, it is. How much time do I have? 2.5 minutes. This is the second round, Mr. Chairman? Yes, it is indeed. Excellent. Okay. Well, as a supplemental question to my earlier one, there's something that I'd like to know in particular. Is the Minister there? Can he hear me? Good. Well, I was right to say, and I reiterate this, that in the agricultural sector, things are urgent and temporary foreign workers are absolutely crucial, as they are in the fisheries processing sector. Now, the problem is that the arrival of these workers is long overdue. We rely on them in our sector, and the problem is that there's a certain amount of money for farmers who would use this money to carry out the quarantine arrangements. We think that's a mistake. And we want to be able to fill all the jobs in this sector as soon as possible. And we want the government to take responsibility for quarantine and the health and safety of these temporary foreign workers. Well, that is an objective that we share, Ms. Chabot. There are resources that are in place for the sector. There are a slew of protections as well for temporary foreign workers. There are a number of examples that I already outlined, and we're going to continue to look for other solutions. Now, just a couple of remarks regarding support for seafood workers.
Jordan did announce recently $62.5 million in initiatives that will provide maintenance and inventory supports, that will add additional storage capacity, as well as health and safety conditions. This is in addition to all of the support that my colleague, Madame Bibeau, has announced in the agricultural sector for farmers. And when you take all of these measures together, Madame Chabot, you see that our government is really fulfilling our commitment to the sector, to the workers that are arriving here in great number, as I said. Good progress in April, and we will continue to make that progress going forward. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you, Minister. Merci, Madame Chabot. The last questioner is Ms. Kwan for 2.5 minutes. Ms. Kwan, you have the floor.
Thank you. Just on the issue around open work permits, I hope that the minister will expedite those who have been impacted with their work permits from a employer-specific work permit to a open work permit across the country. On the question around migrant workers and undocumented workers, those who have an expired SIN number or undocumented workers without a SIN number at all, I wonder whether or not the minister can give us a quick update on what progress has been made in supporting these workers.
So my understanding, Ms. Kwan, is that after engaging with CRA and ESDC, that if the individuals in question meet the criteria for eligibility under the CERB, that they can apply using their SIN, which does not expire for tax purposes, regardless of the status of their work permit. And depending on their situation, they may or may not be able to apply online, but will be able to do so through the call center. And as I mentioned in my conversations with you, we are looking at ways to ensure that all vulnerable populations are receiving access and eligibility to the programs throughout COVID-19.
Those with an expired SIN, though, will not be eligible, and those who are undocumented workers, would they be able to use their ITN to apply for emergency benefit?
I'm sorry, I don't have a definitive answer for you on that last question, but I do know that my staff is continuing to engage with our colleagues in different departments to try and get some clarity.
Two quick questions. It's been brought to my attention that IRCC lines for MPs for non-emergency cases has ceased. I'm wondering when will that resume? And second, can you give us a quick update on what's happening with the parents and grandparents application process? It's been delayed in the beginning of the year. No doubt COVID has impacted this as well. Can you give us a quick update when we can see that program resume?
Well, first, I'm happy to offline with you about any service interruptions. And if you've got concerns, always you can send me an email and we'll get back to you as quickly as possible. And with regards to the parents and grandparents program, I will say that we do remain committed to our work in reuniting families. No government has done more. We've had to defer the relaunch of the program. It was our intention to do so at the beginning of April, but because of COVID-19, we've pushed that back, and I'll have more to say going forward.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Ms. Kwan. Minister, you offered us an hour. We took an hour and 15 minutes. We're very grateful to you for the information that you provided and for being so patient with us as we work through the technical challenges. You're welcome to come back. But I would like to say thank you very much for your appearance here today. You're free to go. I understand your officials are going to stick around for the rest of the meeting. Thanks again, Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks to all of the members of the committee for their questions and their work, and please stay healthy and safe. Merci beaucoup.
Folks, we're going to suspend for 2 minutes while the Minister gets unplugged, and then we'll be right back with officials.
Mr. Chair, we are good to go. Just before, can I ask one of the witnesses just to do a little sound check? Monsieur Dumas, pouvez-vous nous dire quelques paroles avec votre nouveau casque d'écoute?
Can you hear me, sir, with your new headset? Well, thanks for doing this sound check. Yes, we can hear you very well.
It's all good.
Okay, we're back in session. We have with us the officials who were introduced at the outset. I don't think we need to do that again. We'll launch right into questions, beginning with Mr. Kent for 6 minutes, please.
Thank you again, Chair. Thank you, Deputy, and to the other officials joining us today. My first question, I'd just like to ask, what is the current processing backlog of asylum claimants? The last time we met with you and the Minister at Immigration Committee, that number was somewhere in the mid 80,000s. I'm just wondering what it might be today.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So that number would continue to hold steady. We'll get back exact figures from the Immigration and Refugee Board for the honourable member. And some processing has continued throughout this period and will continue to move forward. But I'll get back to you with a very precise figure. It hasn't changed much.
Okay. Now we've seen in recent months before the COVID crisis, and I assume that those requests remain today. That in a number of provinces, regions, and communities across the country, there is a need for expedited recognition of credentials of immigrants with valuable medical experience and qualifications, nurses, general practitioners, midwives, and so forth. I know that the current protocols are set by federal and provincial professional associations in most cases, but is the department working with the provinces to address the needs of these very often small and remote communities?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. We have reached out to a number of professional associations. So this is the responsibility of the provinces, and then the provinces work with the professional associations themselves to see if we could make lists available of foreign trained medical professionals. And I'm going to turn it over to my colleagues at ESDC, who actually have more of the responsibilities. So to Mr. Massé, perhaps you have a longer answer on that.
I wish I had a longer answer. Apologies, get my video again. These are responsibilities from colleagues of mine. I don't have the latest status, although I know they were looking at opportunities to expedite some of the processes that are at play. And you correctly, Mr. Kent, identified the important role of the provincial regulatory authorities in this case. We can certainly loop back with our colleagues to clarify the next steps there.
Now, of the half dozen pilot programs that the department was launching this year or planning to launch this year, and the minister spoke to the fact that some changes have been imposed by the crisis. I'm just wondering, are these pilot projects, particularly the one with regards to remote and northern communities for permanent residents, skilled intake, are those programs still active?
Those programs are indeed still active, and I want to say that we remain open for business, although it's certainly not in the same fashion that it was before this crisis. So any individuals whose permanent residence application have been approved before March 12th are still eligible to travel, eligible to come to Canada, if they can find a way here, that's provided for in terms of the two orders in council. In terms of continuing to work with municipalities, continuing to work with provinces around the pilots that we've established, that's ongoing. We're continuing to look at application intake, but as you can imagine, some of that work has slowed down.
Now, the minister clarified the almost zero numbers or very small numbers with regards to irregular refugee claimants coming into Canada. But we're facing a new situation with regards to Hong Kong residents, persecuted Hong Kong pro-democracy residents who can come to Canada without a visa and and we're told that they plan, several hundreds plan to make asylum claims when they are in Canada if they are not already here. I'm just wondering how the department ensures that the Immigration and Refugee Board will guarantee them a fair and impartial hearing of those claims at a time when there is political sensitivity with regards to the federal government's relations with China and some timidity with recognizing the crisis for those pro-democracy activists in Hong Kong.
Thank you for that question, and we are sensitive to the nature of this. At this time, they wouldn't be allowed to come to Canada with a visa or with not a visa if they were in Hong Kong at the moment. There are a number of people who are here in Canada who've made inland asylum claimants, and that remains open at this time. And my understanding is there are a number of Hong Kong residents who have done that. So those claims are now before the Immigration and Refugee Board, and they'll be adjudicated as their claims come up.
So that those who are in Canada now or who can make their way to Canada would have that 90-day residency enabled and could make a claim after that time or during that time?
Well, here I'm trying to move my microphone to a good spot.
Short answer, please.
It would be difficult to make their way to Canada at this point, but those who are in Canada who wish to claim asylum, we still have avenues open that allow people to do that, to make those inland asylum claims.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kent. Thank you, Ms. Tapley. Mr. Long, please, for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon to the departments and all of my colleagues. My questions are for both departments, ESDC and IRCC, and I just want to talk about a situation that's happening in my province, obviously, of New Brunswick. I know Mr. Kent alluded to it earlier, but on April 28th, the government of New Brunswick announced that it would ban any new temporary foreign workers from entering our province as a result of the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. The decision is having a significant impact on our province, and in particular, our agriculture, aquaculture, forestry sectors. Indeed, the New Brunswick Farmers Union has stated that our province is making it difficult, if not impossible, for farms to ensure production, especially as the season begins amidst uncertainty and instability. We've heard from companies like J.D. Irving with respect to the forestry sector. We've heard from different farmers that temporary foreign workers are critical to the operations of these companies, of these organizations, of these sectors. And it's not just as easy to ban temporary foreign workers and bring students in to replace these jobs. So here's my question. Was ESDC or IRCC informed by the government of New Brunswick of their intention to ban the entry of temporary foreign workers into the province? If so, when?
I can start, and then I'll turn it over to Mr. Massé. No, we did not have advance warning of what the government of New Brunswick intended to do in this situation.
Yep.
The same here. We found out all about it at the same time.
Okay. Were officials at ESDC or IRCC consulted at all by the province? There was no consultation whatsoever. Like, what was do you have any reaction to that, or were you surprised that you weren't consulted?
We have a pretty robust federal provincial table on the immigration side, but no, we were not consulted in advance of this.
Okay. Does ESDC or IRCC have any data regarding the economic impact of the temporary foreign worker program in each province?
I'd be happy to get back to you on that. So we do have some work in this area, and I'm happy to share it. Mr. Massé, I think, may have even more.
I mean, we can certainly look at some of the research that was done, and there were certainly studies around the impact of the role of the program in the fishing sector and the agriculture sector, and those are studies that we can share with you. We know that in Atlantic Canada, in particular New Brunswick, makes up half of the TFWs that come to work in the fish processing and seafood sector. So we understand that that's a big loss for that jurisdiction. We're working with employers and we'll work with the province on looking at alternate solutions, of course, in the context of the decision that was made, and including supporting access to domestic labor. But there's obviously a recognition that there's a loss of experienced workers in this country, and we can, in that sector, and we can share some of the studies that we have available.
Okay, thank you. And would either department conduct a impact analysis of the ban? Is that something that you would look at, just so we have information with respect to that? Because, there's a lot of debate, certainly in southern New Brunswick and across the province, as to, we're hearing from industry, we're hearing from farmers, We're hearing from people in the forestry sector that there is a major economic impact of the ban. So I'm just wondering if you will kind of be conducting a lot more analysis to the Premier's decision.
We won't be conducting an economic impact on the sector from the Premier's decision. I'll turn it to Mr. Massey.
Yes, I agree. I think there'll be an opportunity to look at the impact of this whole COVID situation on the program and what that means going forward. So those are things that we'll be turning to, very soon. And so there's a lot of lessons to be learned in terms of the adjustments that we're going through now, and will be part of the agenda for sure.
Okay, thank you. I don't know how much time I have left. If I do have time left,
less than a minute, Mr. Long. Less than a minute.
Okay, I'll pass. I'm good.
Thank you, Mr. Long. Suite, nous avons Madame Chabot pour.
Ms. Chabot, 6 minutes, please. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Hello to the witnesses. Thank you for being here. I'll take this opportunity to move my motion, which I tabled before the committee on Wednesday, the 6th of May, according to the standing orders. And colleagues, members, you've all received this notice of motion. It's an invitation that I hope that you'll agree to. That is to invite the industry minister to appear before us and answer our questions in relation to COVID-19 and its impact on workers, particularly with respect to the Caisse de dépôt. And let me give you a bit of context. We didn't get the answers we needed from the Labour Department. And you know that this is a Black Friday. You've all read about this. 2 million jobs were lost in the month of April alone, and we know the impact that has on workers. We know that in big sectors of the economy, there are a lot of businesses that will be going bankrupt or filing for Chapter 11. And it's absolutely crucial that we hear from the minister's mouth, from the horse's mouth, the impact on workers and also on the Caisse. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ms. Chabot. As Ms. Chabot mentioned, she's tabled a notice of motion, even though it wasn't strictly speaking required, but it is in keeping with due process. And so I'd be now prepared to entertain any remarks vis-a-vis the motion. If you do wish to speak, please raise your hand.
S'il n'y en a pas, Monsieur le Président, je comprends.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, since there are no other interventions, I can continue with my line of questioning. I'd like to come back to the issue of temporary foreign workers in the seasonal agricultural sector. From the outset, just a moment, please. It's time to vote on the motion. You won't be losing any of your speaking time, however.
Mr. Chair, if I can proceed with the recorded vote?
Please do.
Thank you. So I have Mr. Dong. Mr. Dong, you are muted.
Excuse me. Sorry about that. Yes, my vote to that motion is negative, so I'll oppose the motion.
Thank you. Mr. Long.
Opposed.
Mr. Turnbull.
Opposed.
Mr. Vaughan.
Opposed.
Miss Young.
Opposed.
Mr. Albus.
I'm sorry, I missed that.
Mr. Albus, the vote is on the motion from Madame Chabot to invite the Minister of Innovation, Science and Industry.
Support.
Thank you. Ms. Falk. Oh, you are muted. Oh, sorry, I can't hear you.
Sorry, I was pushing and I don't know what's going. Opposed.
Thank you. Madame QC.
Opposed.
Mr. Viss.
Opposed.
Madame Chabot.
Pour.
Madame Kwan. Madame Kwan?
Support. Sorry, I don't know why my thing is not unmuting.
No worries. So yeas pour 3, nays contre 8. The motion is defeated. Et Madame Chabot, si je peux juste vous demander de juste baisser votre micro, s'il vous plaît.
Ms. Chabot, if you could just lower your mic to make your remarks, please. Could you just lower your microphone just a tad for the next remarks? Well, in fact, it's Madame Normandin who will be asking the next question of the witness. Madame Normandin, the floor is yours. Thank you very much. I'll pick up where I left off. Since the beginning of this crisis, we know that there are a number of embassies in Guatemala and Peru that have capacity has been reduced, and that means that the processing of visas and work permits for temporary foreign workers has slowed down, particularly for the seasonal agricultural sector. We know that there are workers whose visas had been processed, whose visas aren't in their passports, can board flights, and that there have been a number of measures to expedite things. However, farmers have been calling for some time for a fast-tracking, an expediting of the processing of the visas of these workers that come back year in, year out. And right off the bat, that would have meant that there'd be less pressure on embassies abroad, and it would have streamlined and fast-tracked things automatically. Do you envisage taking such measures for these temporary foreign workers who meet the criteria each and every year?
Mr. Chair, thank you for that question. We have a pretty expedited process when it comes to seasonal agricultural workers, particularly in Mexico, where a number of them come. We put in place a number of workarounds quickly to deal with this situation. So in both Jamaica and Guatemala, we've looked at foil-less visas to be able to go in the passport. But the reality is that those who've been here before, those who we see as a trusted partner in this organization, we do expedite those visas very, very quickly. And we'll do. And just as the minister mentioned, there are 10,961 individuals who are ready to travel, that those visas have been processed and they're ready to go. We have another 4,100 and change that we're in the process of bringing those applications forward and processing them. Our times for processing applications right now are diminished, are reduced. And we're quite pleased about that, of being able to bring this forward. And so we're pushing as hard as we can with our colleagues in both Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada and Fisheries and Oceans and Global Affairs to make sure that we can bring workers here as quickly as we can.
Merci beaucoup. Ma prochaine question, j'ignore, je suis rendue à combien?
My next question, I don't know how much time I have left, but right now, 90% of workers have arrived for the seeding and season. But in the fall, there are other concerns because a lot of harvesting will have to be by manual labour. So I'd like to know what initiatives have been taken by ESDC and IRCC to ensure that there's no labour shortage come the fall.
Mr. Chair, so we continue to wait for additional applications to come in, and this would be normal process on when those applications would come in. So we continue to look at our capacity to do this and to be able to move those applications forward as quickly as we can. And I'm actually quite pleased about what we've been able to do to date. Mr. Massé?
Bonjour, merci pour la question.
Thank you very much for the question. ESDC has already given approval to most workers, and for those who haven't got their approvals yet, there is a fast-tracked process that they'll be benefiting from. I can tell you that we are in contact with employers and also the source countries to ensure that these processes can be streamlined in so far as possible. Because our ultimate goal is to help as much as possible, and things have started off well, and we hope that they'll continue that way. Mr. Chairman, how much time do I have left? Just 1 minute. 1 minute. 2 minutes? 1 minute. I'll be concise. Right now, the border is closed. But there will be a gradual reopening of the border at some point. And the whole issue of illegal border crossers and immigrants will see that again. So what's your game plan when it comes to the Safe Third Country Agreement and getting people across, stopping illegals crossing the border?
Merci pour la question. Sorry, I'll speak in English again. Thank you for that question. As you know, the Safe Third Country Agreement continues to apply at ports of entry. And we've seen a number of individuals come through who have met exceptions to the Safe Third Country Agreement. Others have been turned back, as is the agreement with the U.S. For now, these arrangements remain in place with the United States, including the arrangement of what to do between ports of entry at the land border. And we continue to examine the situation about how this will work in the future.
Merci, Madame Normandin. We have Ms. Kwan, please, for 6 minutes.
Thank you very much, and thank you to the officials. The minister mentioned that work permits and visas are being processed in a turnaround time of 1 week. Is that for all work permits and visas, including the need for extensions?
That's in certain categories. I wish we could turn everything around in 1 week, Mr. Chair. So no, what the minister mentioned was just for certain categories.
It's the officials provide the processing time and the backlog in the different categories to the committee, please. I think it's really important to understand what that situation looks like. And particularly, I'm wondering, in the instance with people who have expired work permits, what is the turnaround time for their application to be processed?
For those with expired work permits, we continue to emphasize, and we have reached out to all our clients, that there is an implied status if you have reapplied for that work permit, and that's been key. I wonder if Mr. Dumas might be able to add to that question.
Thank you, Minister, Deputy Minister Tapley. Indeed, as Deputy Minister Tapley, according to certain categories, we have certain processing times, but we do prioritize, those that need an extension. So we've had a number of reorganization within our operations sector in here in Canada to really address those priorities. So we'll be happy to provide you with further numbers on that.
Okay, if you could do so, please. And when I'm talking about people with expired work permits, for example, if they've lost their job and their work permit expired right in the cusp of that period, they actually don't have implied status. They actually are in a very difficult situation. And I wonder what will happen to those individuals. And that's what I'm concerned about as well. So if we could get those numbers, I think it would be very helpful. I think it's misleading to say that it's being processed within 1 week and when it doesn't apply to all the categories. On the question around exemptions, I've asked the minister about exemptions for people receiving CERB and other government emergency support at this time. On the IRCC website, the only place where I can find where the exemption is indicated, where people would not be penalized in the immigration process, would be for spousal, parents, and grandparents applications. There's no language about its application for TFWs, for example. And I brought this up to the minister's attention, and that is a technical, I think, oversight. I wonder if the ministry will fix this oversight on your website. I looked just this morning and I have not seen an update. And as well, do you have any further information with respect to exemptions for other government emergency benefits aside from CERB?
Ms. Tapley, your connection is not great. If you could hold your microphone close and speak slowly, that will greatly help the interpreters. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I think this is better. For CERB, as the member has indicated, we do not consider such a program to be social assistance for the purposes of imposing a bar around sponsorship, but also for our other programs as well. And we can certainly look for means to clarify that on our website and how we communicate with our clients.
I think that'll be very helpful and useful to give certainty to people. And so that would apply for anyone who's engaged in the immigration process if they're receiving government, emergency government assistance. And is that just for CERB, or is it for other government emergency benefits as well?
What I have is just for CERB, but we can look into other benefits as well. But the same would apply, I believe, in other categories. But that we will get back and confirm.
I would appreciate that because, as you know, the government, instead of coming forward with a direct universal payment, has come up with all sorts of different programs, and different people will qualify under different set of circumstances. If they qualify, it would be astounding if the government would later on in a different program penalize people because of those benefits. So I hope that that exemption of not penalizing people engaged in the immigration process would apply for all government emergency benefits at this time. In terms of open work permits, the minister mentioned that work is underway with respect to that. Can officials give us an update? Because for people with employer-specific work permits, if they've lost their job at this time, it would almost be impossible for them to secure employment. And so therefore, making open work permits available to them would be quite essential. Can you give us an update on where you're at with realizing this?
We are concerned about the situation for many of the reasons that the member has already indicated, and we're working to try and find means to address this.
Do you have a timeline?
I don't have a specific timeline. I'm hoping very soon.
Okay. I just want to emphasize the urgency of this. As days pass, people are stuck in that precarious situation and they're desperate, right? People want to get back out into the workforce, and it also have further implications as well, again, tied to their work permit expiry time period. All of these things are rolled into, with huge implications. The minister
Thank you, Ms. Kwan. You're out of time. Thank you. Next, we have Mr. Albus, please, for 5 minutes.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Actually, I believe Mr. Viss was supposed to be the one taking this round.
Over to you, Mr. Viss.
Thank you. Thank you to the witnesses today. My questions are going to be a little more granular, and I will be seeking some data on processing times and visas issued. But my first question is to Mr. Massey. Can you please confirm yes or no whether LMIAs are still being processed by ESDC? Mr. Massey?
Apologies. Yes, we're still processing LMIAs.
Okay. How many favorable LMIAs have been processed by ESDC since March 15th?
I would have to get back to you with specific data on that. We are prioritizing agri-food and agriculture and other essential service applications at this time.
I look forward to that data. Thank you. Are you still processing LMIAs under the general criteria, the general classification as well?
The program is still open. We are, of course, applying our due diligence in assessing the applications, including requiring employers to provide credible evidence that they've tried to hire Canadians. We review employers' employment insurance history to see if they've recently laid off. We're also pursuing some enhancements to our administration, including ensuring that the business and the employer has a genuine need for the workers. For those that applied prior to the COVID situation, we're also asking employers to re-advertise in the current situation. That includes posting for 2 weeks, that they reach out to underrepresented groups, and that they use our job match service. This is in particular in the low wage areas to ensure that all Canadians that are currently unemployed have opportunities for those jobs. And we're continuing to work on strengthening that as more evidence comes to bear, as well as working with provinces and territories on the labor market situation. So there's a number of things we're doing.
Thank you. Thank you. Is it correct, yes or no, that you generally use labor market survey data issued by Statistics Canada in the determinations you make on behalf of the LMIA applications?
That is part of the assessment. That's not the only element that we do look at, as I've just mentioned. Of course, the labor force survey data is not up to date, and we're looking at other pieces that we can bring to bear to that.
Okay, thank you. Over to immigration. Can you please provide the total number of new work permits issued since March 15th, 2020, and under what classifications? We've already heard the ag numbers from the minister, so I would assume the other numbers would be available too.
We're happy to get back to the committee, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. And I would specifically like information on the total number under skill levels A, B, C, and D broken down for all committee members, if possible. Thank you. Again, to citizenship and immigration, how many temporary foreign workers are expected to arrive in May and June, including agriculture? We heard the agricultural numbers, so I would assume you'd have the other numbers too.
I have the agriculture numbers in front of me, Mr. Chair. For other numbers, they will be down considerably to what they have been in previous years, given difficulties traveling. But no, I don't have those. I don't have those exact projections in front of me.
If you could please provide that information to all committee members, that would be very helpful. And if you could also please provide which work permits would fall under essential services and which would not. And again, to the Deputy Minister, since March 15th, how many work permits have been renewed in Canada? The Minister, I believe, said this was a priority, and this follows along the lines of questioning earlier.
Mr. Dumas, would you have that by any chance?
I do not, but Mr. Chair would be happy to go back to the committee with the information.
Okay. To the officials at ESDC, how do you believe the new labor force survey data that was issued just today impact your determination moving forward in in determining who should be issued a favorable LMIA survey? Because as you will note, that it said that more than 1/3 of the potential labor force did not work or work less than half of their usual hours since March 15th.
Short answer, please.
Apologies. We, of course, looking at that as well as other data that becomes available, for example, data from our CERB and EI system to inform those assessments and of course, reflected in the guidance that are given to officers assessing applications.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Viss.
A point of order, Chair. Point of order.
Go ahead.
Can it be the will of the committee that we receive the questions I asked from the officials within 10 business days?
I don't see that as unreasonable. I would ask the witnesses to make their best efforts to provide the information in a timely fashion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Ms. Young, for 5 minutes, please.
Actually, I would like to give my time to Mr. Hahn if he's, or Mr. Dang if he's there.
Yeah, I'm right here.
Okay.
Thank you,
Sorry,
Kate.
Mr. Don. Thank you.
Thank you, Kay, for giving me your time, and thank you, Chair. And I want to thank the officials for being here with us at the committee today. Now, in my riding, there are many. It's a very diverse riding. There are many neighborhoods that houses newcomers and some international students as well. For example, Parkway Forest. There are lots of young professionals and recent graduates who went through the immigration, study permit, and they are looking at provincial nominees program as a pathway to citizenship. For example, the people will be taking a master degree and in certain fields after 2 years study, and sometimes they're waiting for the opening of PMP because they suspend throughout the year. There is unfortunately a lot of unpredictability in the PMP. So are we working on, to the officials, are we working on increased transparency or predictability of PMPs, particularly in Ontario when it comes to student stream?
Mr. Chair, we work closely with our provincial counterparts. The additional transparency in the Ontario program would be the responsibility of the province of Ontario. But I would add that we have continued with express entry draws throughout this period. We've done some rather large draws, and when we've done those larger draws, that minimum cutoff score has lowered a bit, which has been helpful to particularly to more students who are in that pool.
That's great. And with COVID-19 going forward to the, because we have a very ambitious goal to welcome over 300,000, I think 350, it was announced earlier, 350,000 immigrants to Canada. Are you looking to expand the PMP program and giving more numbers to the provinces, large provinces like Ontario?
Mr. Chair, we're not looking to make changes to the levels plan that the minister announced on March 12th. At this time, we have, and I believe the minister indicated this in response to another question, we are thinking about next year's levels plan. We've started consultations with provinces and territories around the levels plan, and we are considering now how best to do broader consultation throughout the summer so that we can come forward. As you know, we have a statutory obligation to table a levels plan by November 1st.
That's very good. That's very good to know. And I encourage you to go consult with as many professionals in various communities as possible, because I'm sure that the message you will be hearing, it will be very different now, considering COVID is affecting our economy and the demand for labor in various fields. I want to move it to people who apply for citizenship and haven't be able to become a Canadian citizen due to the cancellation of their citizenship ceremony. Is IRCC considering any alternative ways to help them to complete the final steps becoming a Canadian citizen?
The answer to that question is yes. As the minister indicated, we have done one ceremony now virtually, and we are looking at making sure we've got plans in place to be able to proceed with more of those ceremonies.
I strongly encourage you to do more of those ceremonies, and very, very quickly as well, because otherwise we'll have a backlog when this whole thing's over and put additional burden on already very stressed out citizenship judges, because I've been told that they held many ceremonies across the country last year. So yeah, virtual setting, I think it's the way to go. My other question has a little bit to do with what Ms. Kwan asked. Can you confirm to the committee again that receiving CERB will not affect one's ability to sponsor parents and grandparents?
Yes, I'm happy to say again that we do not consider CERB to be social assistance for the purposes of immigration, and so that should not affect application.
Thank you. Can you give us an overview or an update on how we are, what are we doing abroad in terms of taking in different kinds of visa applications?
So abroad, our missions remain open. A lot of our staff have been assisting their colleagues at Global Affairs in terms of repatriating Canadians in those flights. What is a patchwork, however, abroad are visa application centers. And so some may be open for only very limited functions such as biometrics, others are closed altogether. And that's a big patchwork across the country. Our missions, however, remain open.
Any idea?
Mr. Dong?
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tapley. We are at the appointed hour. I would like to thank the witnesses very much for being here and for providing the information that they have. I also want to thank my colleagues. This was a very productive meeting where everyone stuck to their time, and that is greatly appreciated. So with that, we are adjourned. We'll see you on Friday. Thanks, everyone. Enjoy your weekend.